understand not wanting to be on the hook for a sum that's about a third of your GDP. But you are seeing the EU step up and say, we're going to give some guarantees on this. I mean, other concerns are about whether this is even possible under international law. But I'd say to that, I mean, Vladimir Putin didn't think about international law when he rolled tanks into Ukraine and violated European peace.
EU leaders are talking in Brussels to try to reach a deal to use tens of billions of euros worth of frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine's war effort. Around £185 billion equivalent has been untouched since the start of the invasion. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukraine leader, addressed the European Council of Leaders at the opening of the summit.
Money is needed so that Russia does not use these Russian assets as a leverage against us. We want these assets so that it is not a part of the negotiation. We are more confident at the negotiating table if we have this instrument.
Volodymyr Zelensky speaking earlier. Now, Jillian Melchior is the Wall Street Journal's editorial board member here in the studio. Hi to you, Jillian.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. Now, this money is desperately needed, Jillian, by Ukraine, but there are still, as the arguing goes on in Brussels, there are still many doubts and arguments to get through before the European Union agrees to use these frozen assets to get, some 90 odd billion euros to Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's crunch time for Ukraine on this. They're running into a real fiscal crisis come April. And this is important not just to keep their government running, but as the U.S. has been switching from a model of donating military aid to selling it, Europe's been trying to step up, but we had new Kiel numbers out earlier this month showing that Europe's not really filling that void. Now, when I'm talking to Ukrainians, what I'm hearing is that they're really pushing an effort into building their domestic weapons industry, to being able to produce their own drones, their own long-range missiles, and they're making progress on that, but that requires money. And I think during this critical moment in negotiations, if Ukraine doesn't have that assuredness about its future financial situation, about the supply of military aid, about weaponry that it can count on, that really puts pressure on Ukraine during peace negotiations when the West needs to be putting pressure on Russia. So it's quite critical.
And it's fair to say that the leaders, among those leaders and countries gathered in Brussels for this EU meeting, there are greater and lesser degrees of enthusiasm towards getting behind this scheme. Belgium is worried about, because they are holding most of this money in one of their financial institutions, Euroclear. They're worried about being left holding the baby if there's a successful legal challenge by Russia. Others, like Slovakia, like Hungary, well, they've got a good deal of sympathy for the Russian argument as opposed to the Ukrainian argument, and they're concerned about this too. And there are shades in between those positions. Are they going to get through this? Are they going to get round those doubts and objections?
Well, I think that's the critical question. And this is coming as, we've seen Donald Trump try to sideline Europe in negotiations. This is basically a $183 billion Trump card that Europe has to give Ukraine leverage to show that it's still relevant to this debate and discussion, but it has to muster the political will to play it. And, when I'm looking at some of the concerns that Belgium has raised, I understand not wanting to be on the hook for a sum that's about a third of your GDP. But you are seeing the EU step up and say, we're going to give some guarantees on this. I mean, other concerns are about whether this is even possible under international law. But I'd say to that, I mean, Vladimir Putin didn't think about international law when he rolled tanks into Ukraine and violated European peace. Another concern here is about confidence in the Eurozone as a reserve currency. But I don't really buy that argument, because I think that investors can kind of ascertain that this is an exceptional circumstance, that this is dealing with a real crisis that affects European and continental security as a whole. And so if we're jeopardizing it, there are certainly opportunity costs to not acting here as well that I think are underestimated.
All right. Jillian Melchior at the Wall Street Journal, thank you so much for coming in. Now, let me welcome to the programme Kristupas Vaitiekūnas, the Minister of Finance for Lithuania. Minister, welcome to you.
Good evening.
Evening. Do you feel confident, Minister, that the European Union will approve the use of these Russian assets to help Ukraine?
Yes, I feel confident, and I expect that the decision will be reached probably tomorrow, not today, but it will be reached tomorrow on these frozen assets. And of course, we all understand that these frozen assets is the best way to fund Ukraine, because it sends very clear political message. And this message is that aggressor pays for restoration of Ukraine, and all the expenses it needs now.
There's an awful lot of pressure on this gathering of ministers. Just in the last 24 hours, some fresh reporting shows there's more pressure than may have been widely appreciated. For example, Russia has been putting threats and that kind of background pressure on some of those who are closely involved, including officials at Euroclear in Belgium, actively threatening them, warning them that if they go down this route, they will personally suffer. Are you worried about that Russian threat having an influence?
I mean, I think it's important to establish deterrence. Europe needs to act on this.
Yes. And Minister, are you concerned about this?
Russian threats is the thing we already used to for 35 years, and of course we understand our partners in Belgium. It's they have these tremendous assets frozen. I understand they worry, but Russia is an aggressor, and it's more on the line than the threat and the fear to Europe. It's a threat of war in the whole Europe. So it's a lot more. And I understand Belgium is an axis for this decision, the most important country probably, and we need to support it in the best way we can. It asks for guarantees. We must provide these guarantees.
Okay, and I want to get in a moment Jillian Melchior's view on this as well, but let me ask you about another source of pressure, because it's reported in the Times overnight that the White House, President Trump's administration, is also putting on the pressure. They are pressing, we are told, the President of the United States team are pressing European leaders not to agree to this help for Ukraine. They want it not to go ahead in this form. They think that this loan would just prolong the war. What do you say to that?
You know, I think that it would have made some sense to withhold acting on these loans if you could use them as leverage, as sort of a bait during negotiations to get Russia on board. But what we're seeing is Vladimir Putin showing no will to compromise. And I think that the longer you wait on this and refrain from acting, the more emboldened he feels. And I think you're seeing that with some of the thuggish tactics he's employing.
And Minister, the President of the United States adding to the demands for Europe not to take this action. Are you at all deterred by those warnings from the White House, Minister?
Yes, we have to talk to our partners in the US, of course, and we have to understand their position. I think the dialogue and with them is crucial too. And the West, the United States and Europe must be united in the face of this Russian aggression.
But the fact is, Minister, the United States and the European Union leaders who want to help Ukraine are not united in this, just the opposite. They're on opposite sides of the fence. President Trump wants you not to give this help to Ukraine, whereas most leaders in the European Union do want to do it. Are you concerned to have, on this occasion, as in the past, concerned to have President Trump, Minister, not on your side?
Yes, it's concerning, but maybe we have to present him with the better arguments, the better laid out arguments. It's crucial to be united in the face of this aggression.
Okay, Minister, Christopher Vaitiokunis, thank you so much indeed. Last word with you, Jillian. I mean, the Minister seems confident there will be an agreement on this in the end. Are you a clue on what shape that agreement might take?
You know, I think it's most likely, if there's an agreement, to be some form of European guarantee that ensures Belgium is not left on the hook. There are also concerns about Euroclear being left on the hook. So I am interested to see what happens with that. But just to the point of Russia trying to intimidate and threaten, there was a European Observer story about a possible Russian intermediary going and threatening violence against Euroclear executives. You've seen drones hovering over Belgian military sites, nuclear plants. I mean, this is really hard-armed stuff that Russia is doing. And I think the warning for Europe is, if you do not act here, Russia is emboldened by weakness, and this will be sending a sign for weakness. You are inviting more trouble.
Imperative to stand up to Putin and to stick to your principles, even under pressure too from the President of the United States. That's I suppose, the unifying message for those who want to go down this route. Jillian Melchior from the Wall Street Journal. Again, thank you so much.